welcome back to season 2, episode 1, the first installment of Fantasy PD. Back with my lovely co-host, the People's Champion, Dan Miller, and the winner of the Toilet Bowl last year, Nicholas Clement, who this is the final time that Nick will be signing in with this background. So can't wait to see what is in store for next week. Dan will have the Temple flag with him wherever he goes, along with the cowboy hat and that flashy thing around his neck. So, defending champion last year, Dan, obviously, you put together a hell of a year. Nothing that we can take away from you that you did. Top to bottom, you were the best team. So anything that you'd like to start this pod off with?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank all the people in the league for not only laying down their arms and letting me beat them, maybe throwing up 80 points in both the semifinals and finals, thanks Toy and Pete, but teams like Berg, for, making some trades with me. Really everyone for making some trades with me outside of Nick. So no one on Nick's team I wanted, so that's all right.
Well,
or maybe.
I was just going to say chess because I think for most people, especially Chris, we are excited to watch the crash and burn this. We ride 2 Jets receivers to the Toilet Bowl. But Nick, good to see you again. I know I cut you off. What do you got to say?
Hey, no worries. I was just going to say I'm the only one that can lay claim that I was not part of that championship. So maybe that's a good thing and also a bad thing. So maybe you're the people's champion minus Nick. So I wouldn't want to be a part of that one. I want to be a part of this one this year.
I did it for the people that couldn't do it, and you clearly couldn't do it.
That is very true, but I'll take that Toilet Bowl championship in stride.
So
back to back year.
Do we have a picture of Shaw throwing up?
I think it can be easily surfaced. For making this available for all viewership, we are going to hold off on sharing that. I mean, if you have a deep fetish to look at Shaw throw up, I think that would be easy to procure. But personally, watching it live was just all that I needed until it re-memes itself by week 1 of this year. So as we get going, Nick, Dan, what are we excited about this year?
I'm excited to welcome the new members. They put on a great showing this weekend. Jake McManus hounding basically every man, woman, and child to subscribe to the podcast. Give a little round of applause to him, and welcome to our new viewers.
It is right. We started the Saturday night at 13 subscribers. We ended the night at 24 subscribers. So if you are watching this, we have no idea why. Go find something better to do, unless it is the thick of winter in Wisconsin and you have literally scoured all of YouTube to find something. But Jake McManus, congratulations. You are the winner of our $13 Qdoba gift card. If we get up to 100 plus subscribers next year, we might be shelling out a big Qdoba gift card. So, watch out, stay tuned. We also have our first sponsor, which we'll get to in a second. But Nick, anything else we're looking forward to this year?
I'll give some love to the other 2 new guys because, again, they made this weekend awesome. Matt Hebert and Matt Nick. Great name. Both put out a show with Matt Hebert giving that excellent button to screw over his newly appointed rival in the Milk Machine. So it was a good showing by all the new members.
Yeah, and as that brings up, maybe what we could do at some point is just do a deep draft analysis of sober Matt Nick versus late night Matt Nick and see, it'd be cool to track those 2 teams throughout the season and which one performs better. So we might do that, but let's jump into things. I'm going to share here. And we were talking about this earlier, but last year, for those of you who tuned in, the 5 of you, and I am sharing a whiteboard right now. So clearly we're working through some kinks. So let me click the right one here. And can we see Fantasy PD okay? Because we have officially rebranded to Fantasy PD. Everybody now knows that when I was typing it in, I forgot the O. So that's how we ended up at Fantasy, not Police Department, but Fantasy Pod without the O. Which brings us to very exciting news. We have our first ever sponsor of the pod. So our first episode is brought to you by Berg. So a little bit about Berg. So Berg, part of the team, or part of the fantasy league now going on year 2. But quick ad read on Berg. Is your fantasy team 1, 2, 3, or even 4 pieces away from being a contender? If so, check out Berg. Just when you think that the player that's been on your bench for 8 weeks is worth nothing and would sit on waivers, Give Berg a call and he will gladly take them off your hands and give you an RB1 in return. Don't believe me? One of Berg's trusted customers left this review after last season. Berg was there for me when I needed him the most. The rest of the guys blocked my number, but not Berg. Berg gave me Nick Chubb 2 separate times. 100% recommend Berg and his return policy. So if you're like this reviewer and need some Berg in your life, bike on out to Stoughton Hospital and ask for their rhabdo department. Just make sure to leave before visiting hours end at 7 p.m. And as I was sifting through the comments, I came across one other 5-star review. There were a couple 1-stars in there, but the other 5-star review was from a lady named Jane who said, it sounds like the Chubster also found his way onto her team the last few weeks a few times. So not quite sure what she means by that comment, but anyway, sounds like Chubb got around last year. So Berg, thank you for being our first friend of the pod and our first really sponsor of the pod. And we're excited to grow and get some revenue going. We're excited to announce that the $550 that Berg invested into getting this sponsorship will be reinvested into a graphic designer to get a fantasy PD logo. So any comments on our sponsor?
Look at Berg, the transformation from the top left to the bottom left. For those that weren't there, the top left probably didn't go very well for him. I think he lost about 60 to 80 bucks, and the bottom left was the best showing he's ever had in poker, dressed up as the Unabomber. He lost a punishment, I believe, to me last season, that whoever lost had to play poker for 3 or 4 hours without talking or saying anything. So he did that, and he ended up being the winner that night. So maybe he'll have to do that more often.
Dan, as a 5-star review of Berg, any thoughts?
I do agree with what you said. Berg has been there when no one else would. I legit could not have done it without him. Love you, Berg.
Well, Berg, we hope to see you make a better showing this year. Please don't trade your entire team away after one Josh Jacobs touchdown in the first week like it happened last year. So thank you, Berg. We look forward to our next sponsor, but you did only pay $550, so we are going to move on. That's enough airtime for Berg. So let's move along to what is an interesting development. And this is where I'll shut up and let the smarter two on the call kind of talk through our preseason rankings. And in polling everybody, votes in the middle is if you were put in the top 6, and then the championship votes on the right. You couldn't vote for yourself. So if you are out there counting, the reason there's 11 votes is the People's Champion did decide, if I can't vote for myself, why even vote at all? So Nick, what would you like to start off with here? Obviously, you're ranked a little bit higher than the People's Champion here. So I would like to take your opinion first.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a couple things that jumped out to me. I had Cole very high as well, as he was in my top 6. Everyone seemed to agree his strategy of going wide receiver worked out very well. So it looks very likely that he could be making a first appearance in the playoffs this year, which is very exciting for him, along with 2 championship votes. It also jumps out, not one person got more than 2. So we're definitely overanalyzing all of our rosters before a week even starts, but good to see that everyone kind of has a nice variety and who we might think could win it all this year.
Yeah, and I got to say, Nick, the thing I'm most surprised about is Cole as well. This is from the kid about week 8 last year, called me up, said he didn't know how Fab worked. He told me, though, today that he watched a video on Fab last night. So he's not only educating himself when it comes to the draft, but also hopefully he can keep up this star-studded performance into the season. I had a feeling Matt Nick would be bad, but I didn't quite realize how bad he would be. The fact that he was the only person that put him in the top 6 is not a good sign.
Berg did have him there. I'm not releasing any rankings except for Berg's ranking. He did have Matt Nick in his original top 6 until I badgered him a little bit. I apologize, Matt Nick, but that is a development. He did have him ranked number 6.
Wow.
Carry on.
And another thing is Shaw, after strutting around about how much he loves his team, it seems like the rest of the league might not love it as much, except for the one person who voted him champion. That might have been some kind of a gag in which, hey, great joke.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, he had Jamar Chase last year, great draft pick. Some, questionable moves. I think what I'm most excited about this year is to watch how trades play out in the 12-team league with the keeper, which obviously weights rookies and second rounder or second, year players quite a bit more than it did last year. Maybe causing a few bigger name trades at the end of the year that might feel lopsided in the moment, but also preventing some craziness happening just because not every team has as many studs on their team in a 10-man league. So that's what I get away from it. Don't look into this too much. We know absolutely nothing about anything at this point. Obviously, last year, I think Chris drafted Gus Edwards in the second round and he tore his ACL a day later, thus, blowing up his team to begin with. So I'm excited to see how things play out. And obviously, sometimes it just comes down to luck in fantasy. But Nick, what were you going to say?
Look at who's coming in tied for 10th with Shaw, though. Mr. Andrew Berg himself with 3 votes out of 12 people, and he was one of them. So 2 other people in the league out of 11 people thought Berg had the chops to make a top 6 draft this season, and he did not. So I had him in my bottom 6. I thought it was clear. I think it's 2 free wins this season against him. I don't even know if we're going over the schedule today, but I have both Berg and Matt Nick as my twice a season. So that's looking mighty tasty for me this year.
Yeah, and Pete, you brought up a good point that last year Chris drafts Gus Edwards, tears his ACL a day later. This year, Chris drafts some Washington running back, gets shot a day later.
I shouldn't laugh. That's on me.
Chris.
That look on me. My part, I can't laugh.
Yeah, I was on the phone with Chris earlier today, and him walking through how his RB3 got shot a couple days ago was an all-timer. Thoughts and prayers out to Brian Robinson, is that his name? But
and to Chris.
Yeah, and Chris. So Chris, we love you, buddy, and we hope you can carry through on this one. He's very mad that he's only been put as doubtful, so he cannot be put on his IR yet. And he's curious why getting shot does not put you to out.
Did Chris pour one out for our fallen soldier Shaw and over by the CrossFit gym again? I did not hear this full story yet.
Chris did mysteriously leave the CrossFit gym yesterday, midway through our final set of workout. And I said, "Where did you go?" And he said, "I yacked everywhere." And then we were talking in the lobby, and he grabs a carbonated drink, and we're having a good conversation. And all of a sudden, everything starts coming back up, and he runs out to the spot, no more than 10 feet away from where Shaw, added a little fertilizer to the grass and said, "This patch looks a little brown. Let me help it out." And there is some natural organic fertilizer out there as well. So we appreciate their contributions to Madison's, grass, and obviously, they're taking L's there. They've taken L's in Nashville, and we'll see if they take some L's this year. So anywho, let's move along. I think next year, what I'm really excited about is our rivalries for the year. So Dan, Nick, who are you most excited to see here? Which rivalry do you think is the spiciest? Obviously, I think we've got one repeat, myself versus Shaw. I don't think we have any other repeats this year. Obviously, Ebert takes the cake with the pin of F-CK Milk. But what are we excited to see?
Yeah, I mean, you and Shaw is going to be a great matchup again. You're the only one that stayed the same because you guys are mortal enemies. So that one will be fun to watch. I weirdly like the Toy versus Cole one because I think they're going to put some more effort in this year. Toy was already asking, where's the podcast? Cole obviously has done all of his work pre-draft. So I think the two of them, I think all that work is going to translate also into maybe their memes, or maybe they'll do a side bet. They're kind of the East Coast, West Coast rivalry there. So I think that's a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I'm actually excited about Nick v. Berg. I think they're two people that think very highly of their fantasy abilities, and last year it did not pay off. And I'm very interested to see if one or both can turn things around this season and make the playoffs.
I'm excited for the memes that come out of Matt Nick v. Chris. I believe that both of them have very similar interests, and there should be some good wagers on the line. And who knows? They're the biggest wild cards on what could happen. Maybe with the exception of maybe not the biggest wild cards, but who knows what their team looks like week 1 versus week 14. So I'm excited. Happy to have Shaw again. Obviously, if he goes golfing, there's a 90% chance he loses his phone and he's unable to set his lineup. So maybe early on week 1, he forgets to set his lineup and I get a free win. But even if he doesn't remember to set his lineup, it should be smooth sailing. So those are all rivalries. We're going to do more next week as we get into matchup previews, walking through. But today is really to just go through the draft, our form of a draft spectacular. So we're going to do a team walkthrough here. So let me pull up ESPN Fantasy. Let me just stop share here. Let me go over to our league. I had it all up and then I clicked a button.
So Pete, I know Pete's not on Twitter, but Dan, you've been following all of the new burner Twitter tweets, correct?
Yeah, I have.
I think I thought Randy was a great burner for Berg. I thought that was funny when he made that yesterday. But low-key, I kind of like number 1 Wisconsin boy. just yelling out, I love corn, and talking shit about golf courses and how the quality are. I enjoy his tweets, so keep it up, Jake.
Yeah, I really enjoy Condoleezza Rice, whoever is playing that character.
That's actually her. Everyone else is a burner.
True.
She's a member at Augusta, so that's a good.
There we go.
Good end. All right, so where do we start? Where do you want to start?
Just go top left and work our way down.
We'll start down here because our teams are at the top based off of
surprise.
This. So, and people don't want to hear about us. I know our fan, they want to hear about them. So we'll give the people what they want, at least in week 1. But throughout the week. But Dan has said a few words, so that isn't what Chris wants. So I apologize, Chris, but you're gonna have to live with it. So, anyways, let's start with bottom right, the Courtdale Corn Dogs. And I'm not gonna say anything. I'll let one of you two kick it off. Maybe Dan, you know him the best. So why don't we take it away with Courtdale Corn Dogs?
Yeah. So Matt Nick had no idea that Kamara waffle stomped the dude pre-draft, so would have loved to see him do a little bit more research. But I think Kamara is actually going to be a good pick if he can stay out of the clink. So, but I think the big fall here in Matt Nick's team is his wide receiver core. Stephon Diggs is a stud, but Hunter Renfrow, his second wide receiver, could do well, but is going to have problems with Devontae Adams. And then from there, he doesn't really have another. I mean, Jahan Dotson and Tyler Boyd could come out of the woodwork, but his double QB, double tight end strategy really prevented him from getting another good wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and I'll tag along. I actually think his running backs are super solid, like one of the best cores that maybe didn't go running back to start the draft. So David Montgomery and Devin Singletary were great picks. Yeah, I think his wide receivers, I mean, Diggs will be great. He needs a little bit touchdown regression, but his bench is ugly. Jahan Dotson is a fun flyer, but like Derek Carr, Dalton Schultz, backup in Detroit, the 3rd or the 4th string pass catcher in Cincinnati, could use some work there. I will go for every team. I'll give I promised on Twitter a best and a worst pick. I think his best pick, which I actually like Kamara in his first overall, but I'll give his best pick to number his 6th round, Devin Singletary. I thought that was a really good grab. And then I thought his worst pick was, of course, Dalton Schultz in the 8th when he already had a tight end.
I would have loved to see him not reach for a QB. Well, I guess not reaching, but picking a QB and tight end high. Would have loved to see him maybe get Dalton Schultz in the 8th and use that Kyle Pitts pick on a wide receiver. Would have really helped out his team.
Agreed.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz would be an interesting one just because there's no other pass catchers in Dallas right now outside of CD. So it'd be interesting to see what happens if Matt Nick decides, hey, I'm going to flex this guy this week just for the hell of it. But who knows? And Nick Folk won you the league,
Ooh.
damn near won you the league, and basically got Berg right out of playoff contention last year. So, I mean, hey, for a guy who loves Philly, it's interesting to see two Cowboys on the team as opposed to one Philly player. So, watch for that to change throughout the season. So that along with all the other Philly boys on the call. So, any other thoughts? Closing thoughts on the Courtdale Corn Dogs? Thoughts on the name? Is Courtdale where he lives?
Courtdale is his hometown, yes.
All right. So can't wait to have a corn dog when we go out to visit him in Courtdale. So let's move along to Team McManus, new addition to the league, absolute sweet talker, maybe our best recruiter that we've ever seen, a part of this 12-man league, and also our finance guy. So I know that he is working on evaluation for the company. Revenues right now are currently $5.50. That has been earmarked for graphic designer, as I mentioned earlier. So take it away, Dan Miller, since you actually know him the best as well. We'll start with you here.
Yeah, I like Jake's draft here. Big fan of him getting Josh Allen. You probably already know this. I'm a giant T. Higgins fan, so I think getting him is also clutch. But I do think that is also having T. Higgins as your prime wide receiver is a slight to your wide receiver core as a whole. Mm-hmm. T. Higgins and Amon-Ra St. Brown leading your wide receiver core. He's flexing Chase Edmonds right now. I imagine that'll change and he'll put in Thielen. But I think, he's going to need Eckler and Chubb to kind of lead his team because he is a little bit thin at wide receiver.
Yeah, I'll jump in then. I think he did his work. He knew all the guys that were like who to target in the draft. Like he grabbed Edmonds before I could early. Like I think he was projected 8th or 9th round, and I think he took Edmonds in the 6th or the 7th, if I remember correctly. And I think he made his draft strategy grab guys that finished really well last year. So who is that? T. Higgins finished really well last year. Amon-Ra St. Brown finished really well last year. Eckler had that huge performance and he finished really well with a ton of touchdowns. Allen performed. Like he's got a lot of guys that he's hoping that train keeps going, because if it doesn't, then I can see there's a way where Jake does not make the playoffs and things fall off, because he's got the number 2 in Cincinnati. He's got Detroit, who's got Jared Goff thrown to him. Like Eckler's going to regress on touchdowns. Chubb doesn't catch passes. Like there's definitely a route where Jake underperforms this season, but there's a good chance he's one of the top teams. So I thought his best pick was the Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 5th round. I think that's an awesome wide receiver 2 when he already had both running backs, wide receiver, and quarterback picked. And then I thought his worst pick was Adam Thielen, just because I've never been a believer. I think he's very touchdown dependent. And it was also an auto pick. So I'm gonna not give him any marks for taking him when he ran out of the clock.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to look even at Courtdale Corn Dogs McManus, and as we go through here, who do you project to be their keeper next year, right? So I like seeing Chris Olave on his bench. I mean, Jameis is going to throw for 60 touchdowns, just half are going to go to his team. So I like Olave down in New Orleans. And I think he's got, you just look at those top 3 players. That's a fucking freight train to run through as an opponent. Josh Allen, Eckler, and Nick Chubb. So, and obviously, you see if they end up dealing Kareem Hunt in some capacity, obviously that, the value of Nick Chubb just skyrockets there as well. So I will see. I really like Jake's team. Once again, being a Philly boy, we do see that staple Philly player on the team, Dallas Goedert. No idea what round he took it in, but was probably the 2nd or 3rd, just to make sure that he could lock that in. So overall, Jake, great draft. He is my biggest wild card. I have no idea. I can foresee a little bit how Courtdale Corn Dogs and Team Heebie-Jeebies will manage their team. I've got some predictions. I really don't have a prediction on how Jake McManus will manage his team, and I'm excited to see how his personality plays through on his managing style going forward. And then obviously with J.D. McKissic there, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Washington Commanders backfield as we move forward through the first weeks of the season. So Jake, great draft. Welcome to the league. We will head on to the farmer himself, Team Cole. And I like this rhythm we've got going. So Dan Miller, former roommate, former, lover, head on out and tell us about Team Cole.
So I am super impressed with Cole's draft. I was really looking to ding him in some way, but even down to his bench, I think that he has such a strong team. Finding a flex better than Scary Terry around the league is hard to do. Him learning how Fab works and also putting an immense amount of time into his draft, I think bodes well for his rest of season. I'm excited to see if he can hold on to this high throughout the season.
Yeah, I texted Cole after the draft, give him a little love, shout out. Hey, I thought you had a great draft, and his immediate response is, "Are you trolling me? Are you making fun of my draft?" And I'm like, maybe we need to cut back on the sarcasm in this group, because I actually did think he had a great draft. Wide receivers getting Jefferson and Debo is awesome. I will ding him on tight end. Spoiler, that's going to be the pick I thought was his worst. Darren Waller fell to the 6th, and I still thought that was kind of high for him. He has been holding out because of a contract, but like he's also been a little lingering injuries. He's no longer the dominant pass catcher with Adams in town. So his whole team's going to be decided on whether or not James Conner and Patterson can get those touchdowns like they did last year. Patterson, I'm a little bit more iffy on. I think he's going to have to find someone like Walker or Khalil Herbert to take the lead role on their teams respectively. But I had his best pick at the 3rd round with James Conner. No more Edmonds. I think having him as an RB1 is as dream a scenario as you can when you go wide receiver to start your draft.
Yeah, I think I really like Cole's starters. I think his bench is a big question mark. To me, that's where, he runs into an injury. What happens? You got the backup in Chicago. You've got Russell Gage, which that receiving core down there in Tampa Bay there's a lot of mouths to feed and a lot of people on that offense. Who knows where Kenneth Walker, really falls. But I really liked Cole's draft, as you said, Jefferson and Debo. So as we transition up to the next row here, I just want to remind you that this podcast is being brought to you by Berg. Just remember that if Chris Carson is sitting on your team, you can easily give him a call and turn that into Ezekiel Elliott. So let's head on up, and we will actually take a look at the roommate of our sponsor, Stevens Point, KBGB's, Matt Ebert. Dan.
Yeah, let me just pull him up in my little sheet.
Hardest working soldier.
So, my biggest question is, did Kupp peak? I think it's going to be really hard for Kupp to repeat the season that he had last year. I expect to see some regression. I just don't think that is something a player can keep up 2 years in a row. They've also added, is the wild card Robinson, right? They added Robinson.
Allen Robinson, yep.
Allen Robinson, yeah. So another mouth to feed. It's not just the Cooper Kupp show anymore. I really, really like Pittman on Ebert's team. And but outside of those two, I think it leaves a little bit to be desired. I think Saquon stinks. He hasn't had a good season 2 years in a row. He's on a low-powered offense. J.K. Dobbins, we haven't seen him play in a long time. Rashad Bateman, he was very big on Reddit last year. Everyone was telling me to pick him up. I picked him up. He stunk. So I think that he's really going to have to lean on Kupp. And if Kupp just doesn't have that season he did last year, it's going to be tough.
I'm going to give another shout out to him. He was another America's hardest working soldier this last weekend because
absolutely
he was talking to everybody. He was the first person to get someone to buy him a drink, and it wasn't that nice old lady that's the teacher. Oh, I feel really bad. She bought like 4 drinks for our group, and that's probably her entire week salary. So thank you, lady. But I thought Matt had a good draft. I think his wide receivers, he targeted a lot of guys I liked. He got Pity City. I think Bateman's the man. They got rid of Marquise Brown. He's healthy now. Who knows with Ayuk? I mean, it was the Debo train last year. Maybe Debo gets hurt. Ayuk's the guy. Shanahan, you'll never know. Robert Woods is a great late draft pick. So I thought he had a good draft. I think his running backs are very high ceiling, low floor. Probably the biggest variance I can see on all teams because Barkley hasn't been good for a couple years now. Their offense sucks. He's been hurt. Dobbins might not even be the starter week 1. So who is Hebert going to start week 1? Stevenson, who might not even be the starter. So very high floor or high ceiling, low floor for his running backs. I had his best pick being Bateman. He got Bateman in the 6th round, which is a great value. I had his worst pick actually as his quarterback. I think he grabbed him, Matt Herbert. He wishes that was his name, but it's not. It's Matt Hebert. So he went and grabbed Justin Herbert. With the way quarterbacks dropped, I think he wished he would have stayed a little bit longer and grabbed one of those guys in the 8th or the 9th.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree with everything that you said there. And I echo what Nick said about Bateman. And I really like MVS. And I think like he's got cool tiers of wide receivers, like a clear number 1. He's got 2 number 1s on the team for sure, Bateman and Pittman. Then he's got like 2 that are number 1s, but like still could be really good with Robert Woods and MVS. And then Ayuk as a bit of a flyer. So I really like that. He's got the New England backfield. So that's as good as playing Russian roulette in his, on his bench. So good draft. Matt Hebert, welcome to the team, or welcome to the league, I should say. We'll see how you manage throughout the year. You're another wild card to see what happens. And I look forward to getting on the phone with you to talk some trades just so that I can hear you laugh. So let's head on over to ayahuasca. I hardly know her, which is resident Nick Clement. So Dan, the people's champion, who, resident champion of the year, defending champ. What do we have to say for Nick's team here?
I like Nick's team a lot. I think that Jones is going to get a lot of love with the Packers absolutely having no idea what they're doing at wide receiver. I think Swift, solid pick last year, is going to do really well again this year. Mike Williams is a stud. Not sold on Cortland Sutton, but I am sold on Christian Kirk. And I think Christian Kirk is going to wind up on Nick's starting lineup. Dawson Knox scores a lot of touchdowns. Lamar is just a stud. I really like your team, Nick. I think Cortland Sutton is the only person I'm sorted down on. And if one of your running backs go down, I don't know, I guess, what you're going to do. But I think with 12-team league, a lot of people run into that issue.
Yep. My running backs are definitely like very thin. If I lose one of those guys, it's going to be slim pickings. But I think, again, any team is going to have that. I just don't really have a great number 3 option with also playing the Russian roulette of the Patriots. I love Sutton this year. He's the Cooper Cup from last year candidate, gets a new quarterback. Apparently he's been working out, getting breakfast a lot with his new quarterback. So maybe he can make that jump to being a number 1 wide receiver. I thought the draft went really well, about as good as it could have gone from the 12 spot. It's going to look a little bit tougher not having that top guy like a JT or a CMC, but I did the best I could. I thought my best value was Allen Robinson, so I'll put that as my best pick in the 5th round. Could be a nice flex or a wide receiver 2 option, I think, in my eyes. And then my worst pick was either James Cook, because I kind of just needed a running back, and I'll take the flyer on the vaunted Buffalo offense, or I'll do the same thing as I told Matt Hebert's team. Getting Lamar in the 5th felt it felt great at the time, but once I saw Kyler go in the 8th and all these other Russell Wilson go in the 10th, it felt like I could have waited on quarterback. My other comment I'll make is that new sponsorship idea, Pete. Maybe you sell off your team name for every week. Someone gives you $5 and they get to say what your team name is.
All right. Now, that's not a bad idea. Maybe I can get Will Zalatoris on the phone because he's just been, He's
No
been
cheat.
cheating us for the last year, or just bet more on him and, hope it pays off. Fantasy PD. If we're going to bet on one thing, it better be Will. So, Nick, I really like your team. I actually think like the bottom 4 in your roster are pretty fun. George Pickens, I think is a really interesting piece. I think he's going to be, he's a rookie, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be a fun one out in Pittsburgh as they figure out their offense. I like the Rondale Moore pickup off of waivers. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Arizona. I foresee him not having a huge contribution with your team. But yeah, I'm excited to see how you bounce back from last year. I like the Swift Jones at the turn. I thought that was very smart of you, getting those 2 guys, because I think Jones is just going to be a half PPR monster this year. So great draft, Nick. Welcome back. Good to have you back. Good to be talking with you every week in this capacity. Let's move on to the King Henry. And I'll give you one guess as to whose team this is.
I have no clue.
Should we move on? Should we talk about it?
Even though I don't know whose team it is, I can talk about the team though.
Okay.
So I think that it has a ton of question marks. First being Derrick Henry. I saw a lot of mock drafts have him going near 9, 10, because without AJ Brown clearing up that backfield, there's going to be a lot of attention on Derrick Henry. Another person, Juju Smith-Toaster, couldn't really do it in Pittsburgh. So throw him to Kansas City, see how he does there. Reports out of camp are that Juju isn't really blowing the doors off there. So having him as your wide out, I don't know how that goes. He's got Allen Lazard, a total question mark. Packers are doing running or wide receiver by committee. I've never even heard of that. I think Chris's team is just full of who knows. Aaron Rodgers, who's he throwing to? Jerry Jeudy is good, but has Cortland Sutton on his back. Javonte Williams, shared backfield, who knows? Mark Andrews, probably a stud. Miles Sanders, Philly stinks, doesn't run the ball. I think that every player, there's no like, oh, I know that player is a guy outside of Mark Andrews.
I think and Derrick Henry, I would say.
Yeah, as long as he can stay healthy and be the man child he is. I mean, I feel like we've been very rosy for the first 5 teams. I mean, every team's probably going to look pretty good coming out of the draft because we're just going down the line and picking. And then Dan comes in and he's just like, Chris sucks this, Chris sucks that, and he's just kind of picking him off. Oh, that is Chris, your mortal enemy. He unsubscribed apparently. He unsubscribed because he couldn't listen to you anymore. He came up to Pete post draft and was like, I couldn't listen to him talk anymore. I had to unsubscribe last season. So hopefully we can get him back and
this season.
Yeah, hopefully we can get him back and get up to a quarter of a century number of subscribers. So please, Chris, we need you. I know you're the victim here, but let's get you back on the train. But yeah, I think you summed up Chris's team pretty well. We don't really know what a lot of his guys are. Jeudy, Javonte Williams, Juju Smith-Schuster, Miles Sanders, Allard, but I think that was his strategy. Just throw the dart as many times as he can. Hopefully he gets 2 bullseyes to go along with Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, and he'll be sitting really pretty. So
yeah, I think if a couple guys hit, and these are just a ton of lottery tickets, honestly. So if he hits on a few, he's gonna have a decent season. But it's just such a hard team to, I guess, make a prediction for and see how they're gonna pan out.
Yeah, we'll have to see how their teams utilize him. As far as best pick for Chris, I guess I'll do the solid. He took was it Mark Andrews in the 3rd, correct? I thought that was his best pick. I think Andrews is going to be awesome with no Marquise Brown there. And then just because I don't show favoritism, I thought Aaron Rodgers in the 8th was a little bit of a stretch. I think he could have waited on him multiple rounds later and he would have still been there, even with multiple Packer fans in the group. So I think just from a pure value standpoint, he missed out a little bit grabbing Rodgers that early.
Yeah. I think as a former, formerly having Javonte Williams on the team, I think a lot of his season hinges on how Denver runs their running backs. And if his RB2 is RB by committee, where they run him 50% of the time like they did last year, I think that's going to be tough to overcome just because Javonte is a stud, but that is a very, very tough, tough space to be in with an RB2 where it's a complete split. So, Chris, we're excited to have you back. Excited to see Henry back on your team. Good job drafting. Excited to see how it plays out. And let's move along to bring us on up to Harlan's Hogs. And as we get there, I just want to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by Berg. And Nick, Harlan and Berg would like me to let you know that you are a loser. Dan, take it away.
I'm taking it away again.
Yeah. I like
All
this.
right. Yeah, so I think McCaffrey is very much a league winner or a league loser. He's going to be a player to watch. He's going to really dictate the way Berg finishes this season. I really love the TJ Hawkinson pick. I'm bummed out he's not on my team. Will he return to my team? Only time will tell. Michael Thomas, I had a chance to draft. I didn't. I'm very nervous about Michael Thomas. He hasn't played in, a year and a half, pushing 2 years. So I think there's been some reports he's looked good in practice, been some reports he's also hurt his hamstring again. So we'll see about him. But I really do like the Keenan Allen pick, and I think Berg's team is pretty above average.
Yeah, so you were one of the two that voted him as the top 6 then, because I think the only redeeming thing about Berg's team is his hilarious team name and picture. I think Berg might have had the worst draft. Dak Prescott is awful. Who's he going to throw it to? McCaffrey gets hurt every year. Gibson was fielding kickoff returns, so he would literally get a kickoff return and then he would get taken off the field. So he's not even RB1 there, even after the Brian Robinson injury. Mike Evans, Tom Brady walked away from the team because he didn't want to play with that bum. Keenan Allen, old. TJ Hawk only performs for one team in this league, and that's Pete. Jalen Waddle, I didn't even realize he was not practicing for the last 3 weeks, and I didn't like him before that. I mean, come on. And then my final gripe with him, everyone knows you don't take a kicker to the last couple of rounds. Berg was the novice, and he took Justin Tucker like four rounds left in the draft. He took Justin Tucker like that. He just ran out of ideas on who to pick up. He had no idea what he was doing. I'm sorry, Berg, but man, you had a bad draft. Your worst pick was all of them. I did have Jalen Waddle, but I guess it's really all of them. And I'll only give some love to AJ Dillon in the 5th because I wanted him to fall to me.
All right, let's move along.
Who's a loser now?
I have nothing to say. We love you, Bird. We hope your season goes well. All right. If you don't have the players, I guess you can't trade with Dan. So, all right. That brings us over to our favorite, not me, but Will Zalatoris. So, Dan, take it away.
So I do like the team name. He is number 1, not only in our hearts, but also in the St. Jude Championship. So I think a big problem with Peter's team, and I think it's why it looks so thin, is because of taking a tight end so early and also taking a quarterback so early, especially if you could have seen how our draft played out. Quarterbacks went very late. There are a lot of question marks on your team. One big one is DK. Who the hell is throwing to him? Especially with the news that what's his name is staying in San Francisco to sit on the bench. I think DK is going to be a tough one. Darnell Mooney, Chicago stinks. And I do think we are inevitably going to face the year that Kelsey takes a decline. Is that this year? I don't know. Kelsey can continue being that guy, but I'm just not sure. I think your team is just a lot of question marks. Dalvin Cook's a stud, though, so you got that.
I do agree Chicago does stink, but Mooney is one of the few Bears that does not stink. So I like the wide receiver 2 slot for him there. I don't think this is the year Kelsey declines with no more Hill. I mean, he's primed for 9 to 10 targets a game at the tight end spot, which is unheard of. I got my issue with Pete. I have a lot of good things about Pete's team and a lot of bad things about Pete's team. He actually did wait on Kyler Murray. He got him like in the 8th or the 9th round. So like that was very impressive. I like Cook. He got great value on them. But then there's a couple pieces that I really didn't like that he took. Like I think Cam Akers at the running back 2 slot is not ideal. He's starting to fall now that he's coming a little bit slower back, and Henderson is there. So McVay said they're going to split carries. I guess I'll believe him until I see it on the field. So we'll see on him. And then I agree on DK. I don't like him as your wide receiver 1. I think you might have the weakest wide receiver 1 in the league right now. So that'll be an area that you need to improve on. I will show out some love for your bench. I like Pierce. I love Pierce. I think he's the number 1 running back. I like Carter. I don't think Brees Hall's the starter out of the gate. And then you got a couple dart throws with Jameson Williams and Raheem Mostert. Oh, by the way, best pick, Kyler Murray as the 8th round pick. And then, yeah, DK as the last. So I basically beating the broken drum.
Yep. That's what you get when you take a tight end in the second. You're not going to get a WR1.
Yeah.
So, all right. Let's carry along to the people's champion here. Nick, I'll let you take this one away.
Let's keep we got a good flow going. We'll keep it going.
You love yourself so much.
Do you want me to comment about my team? I held off on commenting about it.
That's up to you. I really think I have some good things to say, both good and bad about my team.
All right, we'll go to yours.
Okay, perfect. So I'm really, really big on getting Tyreek in the second. I never thought that would happen, especially seeing that Waddle hasn't practiced in 3 weeks. Just bodes super well for Tyreek. I think A.J. Brown is going to do well for Philly. Jonathan Taylor is an absolute stud, super young, and has nowhere to go but up. Rashad Penny on my bench. I think that was an underrated draft pick, first running back in Seattle. I do think a little bit of, I think the only mistake or knock you could give to my team would be I have 2 Jets wide receivers. The logic there was I think Elijah Moore is the guy. He's the number 1 starting, but I think Garrett Wilson is going to finish the season as the number 1. And taking him beyond the 6th, I have a great keeper.
I'm just making sure everyone on YouTube is watching and they can unmute their YouTube browser because I know everyone muted for that little blurb. So welcome back, everybody. I'm going to give a actual rundown of Dan's team that's not very biased. I have Dan as a bottom 6 draft this year. I'm not going to mince words. I didn't think it went that well. I think there were some spots where he kind of struggled. He kind of like, it seemed to me that he was on the clock and he did not know what to do. And in some cases, I don't think he made the right choice, specifically the picking 2 Jets wide receivers. I think you gotta just go with Moore, and then you just gotta let Wilson either leave or you got to do vice versa. So I actually had Moore as your best pick, and then I had Garrett Wilson as your worst pick on the draft. I've never loved Kareem Hunt on teams. He's had like 1 good year where he was startable. I feel like otherwise he's just an insurance clause on Nick Chubb. Who knows with Mitchell? He's always hurt. 49ers spread the ball. And then, yeah. So you really subscribe to if you get paid, you're going to be really good. I think it's a good philosophy. I don't think it works out every time. So I think it's fair to say one of your 2 wide receivers is going to potentially be a lot worse than a 2nd or a 3rd round value. And then I think you're really weak at quarterback and tight end compared to the rest of the league. You waited very long on that, but at the same time, you've got a very good bench. So it's a give and a pull when you're drafting.
Best pick, worst pick.
Yeah, but the Jets, both of them. It's
That's
Elijah Moore is best at 7 in the 7th round, and then Garrett Wilson in the 9th round.
Yeah, I would say that my thoughts are it was interesting to see the stock of the teams that he doubled down on with San Francisco on the question marks on their offense. I mean, Trey Lance and Elijah Mitchell on who's running the ball out there as a running back too. Like, I have no idea what Debo's going to do. If Debo eats carries, once again, you're running into what's happening in Denver. And then the 2 Jets, right? You already talked about that. I think that the tight end spot, like you talked about, I think that's going to cause a lot of like week to week big question marks as to who you flex. And I can foresee that being like you might pick the right one. You've got a lot of guys right there that are kind of around. I think Brandon Cooks is actually a stud, but I could see it being like, all right, this week I think Elijah Moore has a great matchup, and it can cause, might cause a, mess up as an example. So I foresee that being a potential challenge through the year. Outside that, I really liked Hill, obviously Jonathan Taylor, and I do really like Brandon Cooks this year. So I think you've got a few, just like everybody. I think that's the cool thing about the 12 man is you're not like this person has like 8 studs. It's like you've got a few studs, and then it's about like managing through the rest of the year and making smart trades and with the keepers. So once again, it's a question mark, just like every other team, just like my team, just like Nick's team, just like, well, kind of Matt Nick's team. But that brings us to the end of the
we got 3 more. We got 3
I
more.
skipped this row. I apologize. I was like, I thought we only went through 9, and we're gonna wrap this up as soon as possible. But Milkman, Dan, we've got this. Go ahead with the milk.
Yep. I really like Najee on his team. I really was high on Devontae Adams, even though I had no chance of getting him. I really do not like the corpse of Zeke. I think, they're paying him a ton. They're going to run him into the ground, but I think he is very close to the ground. I think that the rest of your team leaves a lot to be desired. Marquise Brown, Josh Jacobs. I really don't think that those are dudes. Melvin Gordon might see his way into your starting lineup. But like Matt Nick pointed out and didn't get a lot of attention, 3 tight ends, and really none of them are good. And I think that's going to be a struggle for Milk this season, is just dealing with his bench.
Yeah, after like the 7th or 8th round, Luke, in every draft I've ever been with, runs out of guys he recognizes, and then he just goes for those that he does. So he knew Gesicki, he knew Higbee, he knew Madison, he knew Gordon, and that was kind of that. So I thought Luke did okay. I'm like never really that impressed with a Luke draft in any of my time being with him, and then he always somehow finds a guy that's like a league winner. Like, so last year it was James Conner. No one thought James Conner was going to be good. Scored 18 touchdowns. I'm very and Cooper Kupp. Yes, there. Cooper Kupp was a 5th round guy, and he goes crazy for him. I'm weirdly thinking like Josh Jacobs could be that guy. I hate Josh Jacobs this year. Everyone thinks he's going to be awful. Who's to say Josh Jacobs isn't just like a 15 touchdown guy, and then he just averages 30, 40 yards? Like, that's in the realm of possibility because he's on Luke's team, so that's why it's possible. That being said, I think it was his worst draft pick. He picked him in the 4th round where there were so many good guys left. I thought his best draft pick was actually Zeke. I know you said he's kind of a corpse. I don't think he's a top 5 guy anymore, but I think in the 3rd round, that's really good value to get your running back too. So I'm interested to see how he does. I mean, weak bench, but he always finds a way to find gems. So I'm sure he'll do fine.
From a personal storyline, I'm really curious to watch Devontae Adams this year. He was the guy that
Yeah.
I thought about over taking Kelsey or Devontae Adams. I think it's going to be fascinating from a former Packer fan and from a fantasy player to see what Devontae does and what Marquise Brown does, because that's another offense. That's the offense, if you go around the league, in my opinion, that has the most mouths to feed at a top tier level. And you have, on top of that, you have a running quarterback who's going to steal 6 to 8 rushing touchdowns and 6 to 8 touchdowns in the year running them in.
The 2nd round was actually, like, in my opinion, like almost the craziest round in our draft. Like, everyone kind of threw out ADP, and there were a lot of like risers and fallers. Like, I took Aaron Jones, who's been falling to the end of 2nd rounds in some drafts. Alex took Leonard Fournette, who had the 2nd pick in the 2nd round, and he's been at the end. Like, almost there's a good chance that he falls. Yeah, he falls to the people's champion or whatnot. And then like that fallers like Kelsey and Adam. So it was a interesting 2nd round that we kind of started to sway away from maybe the ESPN ADP, and we really started to make it our own and go for the guys we thought we believed in. So it's cool to see.
Yeah,
I really
thought Adams might be there, but I did not think Kelsey would be there at my spot as an example. Go ahead, Dan.
I just thought I'd get touchdown Lenny at at my turn.
Yeah. All right, just here to beat Dan. Love the team name. Maybe one of my favorite team names of all. So Dan, the guy he's attempting to beat. Take it away.
Yeah, I like Jamar Chase. I think he's an absolute dominant number 1 wide receiver. But outside of that, I have question marks for Toy's wide receiver core. Deontay Johnson, like Pittsburgh is going to regress, I think, in a major way, and you're going to see that with Deontay Johnson. And then after that, he doesn't really have another wide receiver. I mean, he's flexing Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I'm not big on, and I know a lot of other guys aren't either. And then maybe D-Hop later in the season when he gets out of suspension, but he didn't even perform well last season. Robbie Anderson has Baker Mayfield throwing to him, who he's already publicly denounced. I just don't know how it's going to go at wide receiver for Toy. I really didn't care for Toy's draft. I like his running backs. I love touchdown Lenny and the Travis Etienne. I like that. But I think top 2 running backs, top wide receiver, and George Kittle, studs. I think outside of that, there's some question marks.
Yep, I really I think I'm in the same boat. I really like the top the top 6 on there: Wilson, Fournette, Etienne, Chase, Johnson, Kittle. I think those top 6 are great. I think the rest of his roster's pretty shitty. Like, I just don't think anyone. I have his worst pick being Tyler Lockett. He took him in the 7th round. He's the wide receiver for a team that is not going to throw the ball more than 20 times. Like Geno's, they went with Geno because they're going to run. Which is a nice bump for their running backs, but not a good bump for DK and Tyler Lockett. So his team's going to look really weak early on the bench because like Hopkins suspended, James Robinson hurt. Yeah, Robbie Anderson, Dontre Hillard, like that's a shot in the dark in case Henry's hurt. So I think he's got really good top end talent and he's got a really weak bench. So he'll need to make some moves throughout the season to keep this thing going. I had his best draft pick as the 10th round. He got Russell Wilson, which was very impressive. He capitalized on the quarterbacks going very late in our draft.
Yep. I love Russell this year. That's why I played him until Kyler slid.
Yep.
All right. And the rival, half and half. Dan.
Yeah, so I really like DJ Moore and Cooper Kupp on your team, Shaw. I think DJ Moore having Baker throwing to him, DJ's shown he could be a true number 1 with Sam Darnold. I think Amari Cooper, once that rapist gets back to Cleveland, I think will start going well. Now it's getting Amari to week 13 or whenever. I forget his that Deshaun Watson gets back. Zach Ertz, I think, is going to put up some maybe top 5 tight end numbers, and I like Joe Mixon a lot too. I think he gets a lot of touchdowns. I did not like the Breece Hall pick. I think you took him in the 3rd. I really think he's going to share carries with Michael Carter. He is a top level talent, but the Jets do have a really bad offensive line and just organization.
Breece Hall was a 4th round pick.
Gotcha.
He took DJ Moore in the 3rd round. I loved Shaw's draft. Actually, I have him in the top 6. I think he's gonna have a great season. I thought almost every pick, I was like, okay, I like that. That's who I probably would have been considering. The only person I hate, which is the guy I said was his worst pick, was Amari Cooper in the 6th round. I think that was one of the worst picks in the league. I think him in the 6th, Lockett in the 7th. Like, there's definitely a running for worst pick in the draft, and he's up there. I don't believe in Brissett. But if you just move up Gabe Davis, who I love, and I think he took Gabe Davis in the 5th. So I don't know why he has him lower. If he puts him in his flex, like, his team is so solid. Breece Hall could be a league winner. I think his wide receivers are stacked for 1 and 2. Ertz is super solid. He's got the Zeke.
The playoffs, Amari Cooper coming back with Deshaun Watson is going to be huge for him, and
yeah,
it could be another wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I agree, but that's a high price to pay to hope that he comes back in week 14 or 15 or whatever to have you. And like, are you really going to be that confident to play him over potential studs like Lamb or DJ Moore? So
yeah, with the quarterback played in 2 years, yeah.
Yep, I think his team's super solid. I think he did really well, so I liked it.
Yeah, the only thing I'll comment on from Shaw's draft is when he sat there and hemmed and hawed over Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow. really made me question. And so I'm happy that he made the right choice, but and that he chose Joe Burrow, and he almost didn't because of being on the same bye week as somebody else. So Dubs is a fun one too as a Packers fan. Kenneth Gainwell, who knows like what happens in that Philly backfield. There's a lot of, there's mouths to feed, and Pollard's a lot of fun too, because what is Zeke going to be? Can he stay healthy? So I think that's a cool pick as well.
It's good to get someone in the league to balance out all the Eagle fans. Now that we have a Cowboy fan in the league, it's really good to keep everyone at bay.
Very true. Very true. That's right. We have a former Eagle on the team, but no current. Oh wait, no, sorry. Kenneth Gainwell.
He had Kenny G, but
of course he did get Zach Ertz. So we are happy that he has returned home, and it will require an RB1 to get him off his team. So Shaw, we look forward to seeing you ride Zach Ertz off into the sunset, whether that be the playoffs or the toilet bowl in another vomiting session outside of Madison Great Dane. So that wraps up this time around the actual run through of our draft and what happened. Obviously, we know nothing. We are just three idiots that are talking about sports here and talking about fantasy. And remember that who knows what happens this year, and we wish everybody the best of luck and health. So that brings us back. We're going to stop sharing here. We're going to jump. All we have here next is any closing thoughts. We'll go through some updates in next episode in a second, but closing thoughts.
Good to be back.
Looking forward to the season.
It's going to be nice this episode. Obviously, you're listening to it very early in the morning. I know it premieres at 8 a.m. Thursday mornings. That's Eastern Standard Time. So we look forward to being on your screen with you every morning, being there, talking you through the season. It's exciting to be back. A couple of updates for the pod. We're going to be looking at giveaways. So as we start to get some sponsors, maybe I sell off my team name, it's going to be really hard for me to go delete on the Will Zalatoris name. So it's going to have to be a juicy offer. Financials update. We are investing our $550, as mentioned earlier, into graphic designer to get a Fantasy PD logo. And next time around, we are going to have a guest on the podcast that is TBD. So reach out if you would like to be a guest on the podcast. Maybe give us your value proposition on why you think you should preview week 1 matchups, and we will have an internal conversation. And just a reminder that this episode was brought to you by Berg. Nick thought very highly of Berg's draft, so we look forward to see how that plays out. And with that being said, we thank you for listening to installment number 1 of Fantasy PD Season 2.
Peace.